Get up this instant, you filthy half-breed." The piercing shriek tore through the grand hall, jolting Maya awake as if stabbed by a shard of ice. Her eyes snapped open, wide with fear and disorientation. She had only intended to rest for a moment, just a fleeting respite after the back-breaking labor of scrubbing the vast marble floors on her hands and knees since the first crack of dawn. The plush velvet cushion beneath her cheek felt like a stolen cloud, a world away from the thin, straw-filled mat in the cramped servants' quarters where she usually slept. She hadn't even realized she'd succumbed to the siren call of sleep. Lady Seraphina loomed over her, a figure of wrath and aristocratic fury. As the Alpha's sister, she usually possessed a striking beauty, but now her face was contorted with a rage that twisted her features into something almost monstrous. Behind her, a silent, judging audience had gathered. At least 24 pack members had been drawn by the commotion, their anticipation for the evening feast momentarily forgotten. All of them staring, all of them watching as Mia scrambled clumsily to her feet, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. "I'm so sorry, my lady," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper in the vast hall. I didn't mean to." The slap came without warning, a brutal, stinging blow that snapped Mia's head violently to the side. A searing pain erupted across her cheek, and she tasted the coppery tang of blood where her teeth had sliced into her inner lip. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Seraphina's voice dropped to a deadly whisper, a chilling contrast to her earlier shriek. Yet somehow the sound carried with terrifying clarity through the entire hall, silencing the murmurs of the gathered wolves. "That is the Luna's chair. It has been in the Blackthorn pack for 3 centuries, a testament to our lineage and power. It was carved from the heartwood of a sacred oak, blessed by the moon goddess herself under a convergence of celestial stars. And you, a mongrel with barely enough wolf blood to even manage a pathetic shift, you dared to defile it with your presence." Maya kept her head bowed, her long, dark hair falling forward like a curtain, desperately trying to hide the tears that threatened to spill over. She was used to this, used to being treated as less than nothing. Her mother had been a wolf, yes, but a low-ranking one, and her father had been a human. A shameful secret in a pack where pure bloodlines meant everything, where lineage dictated worth. She was less than nothing, an unwelcome stain on their perfect, unbroken ancestry. She'd been reminded of that fact every day of her 23 years. "Strip the cushions," Seraphina commanded, her voice laced with venom, addressing the other servants who now stood frozen in the periphery. "Burn them to ash. We'll need to have the entire chair purified by the coven before." "Before what?" The voice rolled through the hall like a thunderclap, silencing everyone in its wake. Even Seraphina, especially Seraphina, visibly flinched. Maya had never heard Alpha Dominic Blackthorn speak directly, not even a casual greeting. She'd only ever caught fleeting glimpses of him, a massive, imposing figure moving through the corridors, a shadow of dark hair and even darker eyes, power radiating from him like palpable heat from a roaring flame. He was the youngest Alpha King in centuries, ruling not just one pack, but a powerful alliance of 7, his influence stretching across the land. People whispered stories about him. They said he'd killed his first challenger when he was barely 16, barely a man. They said his wolf form was the size of a bear, black as midnight without a single star, with eyes that glowed with an unnatural, chilling silver in the dark. They said a lot of things, tales spun from fear and awe. "My lord," Seraphina murmured, sinking into a deep, obsequious curtsy. Maya followed suit, her knees nearly buckling under the weight of her fear. "I was just dealing with this half-breed." She fell asleep in the Luna's chair. "The disrespect is—" "I asked before." Dominic's voice cut through her fawning explanation, each word precise and laced with steel. His footsteps echoed with each measured stride as he crossed the vast expanse of marble floor. Maya could only see his boots from her kneeling position. Expensive leather, custom-made, impeccably polished. "What do we need the chair purified of?" Seraphina's laugh was brittle, strained. "Before your chosen mate arrives tomorrow, of course." Lady Vivian Silverstream will be here to discuss the final terms of the alliance, and when she sits in the chair, it will recognize her as the future Luna, as it has recognized every Luna for generations. We can't have it tainted by... Stand up. It took Maya a moment to realize he was speaking to her. Her legs trembled beneath her as she slowly, agonizingly rose to her feet, still keeping her gaze fixed on the floor. Alpha wolves, especially one as powerful as Dominic Blackthorne, could interpret direct eye contact as a challenge, a sign of defiance. And she wasn't stupid enough to challenge an alpha king. Look at me. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. Slowly, so slowly, she raised her eyes, her gaze traveling up his towering frame. Dominic Blackthorne was even more imposing up close, a walking embodiment of raw power and controlled danger. He stood well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders straining against the taut fabric of his black shirt, hinting at the formidable strength that lay beneath. His face was a landscape of sharp angles, high cheekbones, a strong, square jaw dusted with dark stubble, a straight, aquiline nose that looked like it had been broken at least once in some long-forgotten battle. But it was his eyes that stole her breath, that held her captive. They weren't the brown or amber she'd expected from a wolf. They were silver, pure, metallic silver, like liquid moonlight given solid form. And they were staring at her, boring into her with an unnerving intensity that made her feel like she was being dissected. Every hidden flaw and insecurity laid bare under his scrutinizing gaze. "What's your name?" His voice was softer now, a low, resonant rumble, but no less powerful, no less commanding. "Maya Thornhart, my lord," she managed, her own voice barely above a whisper, a fragile thread in the face of his overwhelming presence. "Thornhart." He said it like he was tasting the word, turning it over in his mind. "You're Eliza's daughter." Maya nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement. Her mother had died 5 years ago from a fever, a common ailment that had swept through the servants' quarters, claiming the weak and vulnerable. Eliza had been a low-ranking wolf, a servant like Maya herself. It surprised her that the Alpha King even knew her mother's name, let alone remembered it. "She had a good heart," Dominic said, and something flickered across his face, a fleeting emotion that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Grief, maybe, or regret, or perhaps something even more complicated. "You have her eyes." Before Maya could respond, before she could even begin to process the unexpected compliment, Serafina stepped forcefully between them, her smile sharp and brittle as shattered glass. "Brother, please don't let sentiment cloud your judgment. This half-breed broke one of our most sacred traditions. She needs to be punished. I suggest 20 lashes and..." "Sit down." Serafina blinked, her carefully constructed composure momentarily faltering. "What? Sit down?" Dominic repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. He gestured towards the Luna's chair with a dismissive wave of his hand. "If you're so concerned about the chair's sanctity, sit in it. Show everyone how it responds to true Luna blood." The hall had fallen completely silent, every breath held, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. Even the servants who had been meticulously setting up for dinner had stopped their tasks, frozen in place like statues, their silverware clattering softly against the tables. Serafina's smile wavered, the cracks in her facade widening. "I don't need to prove anything. Everyone knows the chair only responds to the Alpha King's true mate. It won't mold to anyone else. And once Lady Vivian, are you refusing an Alpha's command?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, a palpable shift in the atmosphere, a silent warning of the consequences to come. Serafina's face went pale, the blood draining from her cheeks, and she quickly shook her head, her voice trembling slightly. "No, of course not, my lord. I just think it's unnecessary. Sit." Serafina moved to the chair with jerky, reluctant movements, her grace and poise replaced by a stiff, almost robotic demeanor. She lowered herself onto the cushions with exaggerated care, arranging her expensive silk dress around her with precise, almost frantic movements. She sat there for a long, agonizing moment, her spine ramrod straight, her hands folded primly in her lap, her eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign, any indication that something was happening. But nothing happened. The chair remained exactly as it was, elegant, beautiful, but utterly unchanged. It didn't shift. It didn't mold. It didn't acknowledge Serafina's presence at all. "Well," Dominic said dryly, the corners of his lips twitching with a hint of sardonic amusement. "How interesting. Perhaps you should stand, sister." Serafina shot to her feet as if she'd been burned, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of embarrassment and barely suppressed rage. The pack members gathered around were whispering now, their voices a low, insistent buzz of confusion and speculation, their earlier silence shattered by the unexpected turn of events. Then Dominic turned those unnerving silver eyes back to Maya, and her stomach plummeted, a sensation akin to free falling from a great height. "Your turn." "My lord, I can't. I shouldn't." "Sit down, Maya Thornheart." It wasn't a request. It wasn't even a command in the traditional sense. It was an alpha's will made manifest, a force of nature that brooked no argument, and her body obeyed before her mind could even catch up. She stumbled towards the chair, her legs feeling like lead, and sank onto the cushions, her whole body trembling with a mixture of fear and anticipation. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Relief, sharp and unexpected, flooded through her. "See," she wanted to say, "I'm nobody. The chair knows it. Everyone knows it." Then the world shifted. The cushions beneath her began to warm, radiating a gentle heat that seeped into her skin, and she felt them moving, subtly reshaping themselves, conforming to the contours of her body. The back of the chair curved forward to support her spine in a way that felt strangely comforting, almost like an embrace. The armrests adjusted to the perfect height for her arms, as if they had been custom-made for her alone. The seat itself seemed to cradle her body, molding to her shape with an almost intimate awareness that made her gasp, a feeling both unsettling and strangely exhilarating. And there was something else, a tingling sensation that started where her skin touched the velvet and spread through her entire body like a wave of warmth, a subtle energy that resonated deep within her bones. It felt like being wrapped in moonlight, like coming home to a place she'd never been before, but always belonged, a sense of recognition that stirred something deep within her soul. The whispers exploded into shouts, a cacophony of disbelief and outrage. "It's impossible. She's a half-breed. The chair must be broken. Someone check the enchantments now." Maya tried to stand, to escape the bewildering attention and the overwhelming sensations, but the chair held her fast. Not forcefully, not in a way that trapped her or bound her, but with a subtle, persistent resistance. Every time she started to rise, the cushions adjusted again, drawing her back down, refusing to release her from their embrace. It was like the chair was claiming her, staking its claim on her very being, and it wouldn't let go. "Dominic, this is madness." Serafina's voice cut through the chaos, shrill and desperate. "The chair must be malfunctioning. We need to bring in the pack elders, the witches who enchanted it centuries ago. This half-breed can't possibly be." "She is." Dominic's voice wasn't loud, but it carried a weight of authority that silenced everyone, a pronouncement that defied any challenge. He moved closer to the chair, his presence filling the space around Maya, and she could smell him now, a heady combination of pine and rain and something wild and untamed that made her dormant wolf stir for the first time in months, its instincts suddenly awakening with a jolt of recognition. Her wolf, which was usually so weak and quiet, barely a whimper in the back of her mind, suddenly perked up with interest, its senses alert and focused. "The chair recognizes her," Dominic continued, his silver eyes never leaving Maya's, "which means the moon goddess recognizes her. But the alliance with the Silverstream pack, your engagement to Lady Vivian, is political, not fated." Dominic crouched down so he was eye level with Maya, his gaze softening, and the unexpected tenderness in his expression made her throat tighten, a lump forming that threatened to choke her. "The chair has never been wrong, not once in 300 years. If it claims her, then she's mine." The possessiveness in that last word, the raw, undeniable claim, sent a shiver down Maya's spine, A thrill of fear and something else. Something she couldn't quite name, that resonated deep within her. Get up. Serafina's face was purple with rage now, her features distorted by a fury that threatened to consume her. Get up right now, you little. Touch her and I'll rip your throat out. Dominic didn't raise his voice, didn't even need to. The threat was delivered with such casual certainty, with such cold, unwavering conviction, that Serafina actually took a step back, her hand flying instinctively to her neck as if she could already feel the phantom pressure of his fingers closing around her throat. She's my mate, Dominic continued, his voice still soft, almost conversational. But the undercurrent of menace was unmistakable, still looking at Maya, his gaze unwavering. The chair has confirmed it, which means she's under my protection. Anyone who harms her, threatens her, or even speaks to her with disrespect will answer to me personally. Is that clear? Dead silence descended once more, hanging heavy in the air. Then, gradually, hesitantly, the pack members began to nod, their expressions a mixture of shock, confusion, and begrudging acceptance. Some looked confused, their brows furrowed with disbelief. Others looked angry or resentful, their eyes narrowed with open hostility. But all of them, even the most arrogant and powerful, bent their necks in a gesture of submission to their alpha king. All except one. This is a disaster. Serafina's voice shook, but she held her ground, her defiance fueled by a mixture of ambition and wounded pride. The Silverstream pack will see this as a blatant insult. Lady Vivian's father controls the Northern Territories. If you reject his daughter for this mongrel, he could pull out of the alliance. We could have a war on our hands. Then we'll have a war. Dominic stood to his full height, towering over Serafina, forcing her to crane her neck to look at him. The silver fire in his eyes burned brighter, hotter. I don't care about political convenience. I care about what the moon goddess has decreed. This is my mate, my Luna, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can challenge me for the right to rule. He let that hang in the air, a silent gauntlet thrown down before them all. No one moved. No one spoke. Everyone knew that challenging Dominic Blackthorne was suicide, a fool's errand with only one possible outcome. Finally, Maya found her voice, her words barely audible, laced with a desperate plea for understanding. My lord, I don't understand. Why would the chair? Why would the goddess choose me? I'm nothing. I'm barely even a wolf. I can't shift properly. I can't mind link with the pack. I have no training, no education. No, Dominic said, his voice firm but gentle, cutting off her self-deprecating litany. You have courage. He reached out and cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing lightly over the red mark where Serafina had slapped her. His touch surprisingly gentle for someone so powerful, so feared. You've survived in a pack that treated you like dirt for 23 years. You've worked yourself to exhaustion every day and never complained. You've endured humiliation and abuse, and you're still here, still standing. That's not weakness, Maya. That's strength. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them, hot and unexpected. A release of years of pent-up pain and suppressed emotions. No one had ever, not once in her entire life, said anything like that to her. No one had ever acknowledged her worth, her resilience, her quiet strength. The chair knows, Dominic murmured, his silver eyes locked on hers, his gaze holding her captive. I know, and soon everyone else will know, too. You're mine now, my mate, my Luna, and I protect what's mine. He straightened and addressed the crowd, his voice once again commanding, decisive. The feast will proceed as planned. But there will be one change. Maya Thornheart will sit beside me at the high table. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. No one left. Of course not. But Maya could feel the hostility rolling off some of them in waves, a palpable force that threatened to suffocate her. Serafina most of all, who looked like she wanted to set the entire hall on fire, reducing everything and everyone to ashes. Dominic extended his hand to Maya, his silver eyes offering a silent invitation. Come, let's see if the chair will release you now that you've been claimed. Maya hesitated for a moment, then took his hand. His skin was warm, rough with calluses, a testament to his strength and his life as a warrior. She took a deep breath and tried to stand, focusing all her will on the simple act of rising. This time, the chair let her go. The cushions returned to their original shape, smooth and unyielding. But Maya could swear she felt something like satisfaction radiating from the ancient wood, a sense of completion, as if it had been waiting for her all along, patiently biding its time until she finally arrived. Dominic kept her hand clasped firmly in his as he led her towards the high table, a symbol of power and authority reserved for the Alpha King and his Luna. The pack members parted before them, their faces a bewildering mix of shock, curiosity, and barely concealed anger. Maya's legs felt like water, and she would have stumbled if Dominic hadn't steadied her. His grip firm and reassuring. "Breathe," he murmured, his voice quiet enough that only she could hear, a private reassurance in the face of the public spectacle. "You're safe. Promise." She wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to cling to his words like a lifeline. But a lifetime of being nothing, of being less than nothing, was hard to overcome in one night. A lifetime of ingrained fear and insecurity didn't simply vanish at the command of an Alpha King. As she passed Serafina, the other woman leaned in close, her eyes narrowed with malice, and hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "This isn't over, mongrel. The chair may have chosen you, but the pack never will. You'll be dead within a month." Maya's blood turned to ice, a cold dread seeping into her bones. But before she could respond, before she could even process the chilling threat, Dominic's arm wrapped possessively around her waist, pulling her against his side. His touch both protective and possessive, a clear declaration of ownership. "Say that again," he said to Serafina, his voice dangerously soft, his silver eyes glinting with a lethal light. "Please give me a reason." Serafina's eyes widened, and she took several quick steps back, finally showing some sense, some awareness of the peril she was in. The rest of the evening passed in a blur, a surreal and disorienting dream. Maya sat beside Dominic at the high table, a place she'd only ever seen from across the room, a distant realm reserved for those of high status, while she served food and wine to the pack members. Now she was the one being served, the object of their attention, and she had no idea what to do with half the silverware in front of her, overwhelmed by the sheer opulence of the setting. Dominic helped her quietly, patiently showing her which fork to use for which course without making a big deal of it. His guidance discreet and considerate. He filled her plate with the best cuts of meat, the most succulent morsels, and made sure her wine glass never emptied, treating her with a reverence she'd never experienced before. The pack members ate and drank and talked, their conversations a low hum of background noise, but Maya could feel them watching her, judging her every move, scrutinizing her every gesture, waiting for her to screw up, to prove that she didn't belong. She barely touched her food, her appetite replaced by a knot of anxiety that tightened with each passing moment. "You need to eat." Dominic's voice was low, meant only for her ears, a private concern in the midst of the public spectacle. "You're too thin." "I'm not hungry." "You're scared." He didn't press, didn't demand, but simply acknowledged her feelings, his empathy a balm to her raw nerves. He cut a piece of roasted chicken into bite-sized pieces and held the fork out to her, his silver eyes pleading. "Eat, please." The please surprised her. An Alpha King didn't say please to anyone, especially not to a former servant. But there was something in his eyes, a vulnerability she hadn't expected to see, a flicker of genuine concern that touched her deeply, that made her take the bite. The chicken was perfectly seasoned, tender and juicy, and despite everything, her stomach growled in appreciation, betraying her anxiety. Dominic smiled, a real smile that transformed his harsh features into something almost boyish, softening the lines of his face and revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the warrior. "There, that wasn't so hard, was it? Why are you being so kind to me?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, a hesitant plea for understanding. "You don't even know me. I know enough." He set down his own fork and turned to face her fully, his silver eyes locking on hers with unwavering intensity. "I know you're my mate, The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, Maya. If she chose you, then you're exactly who I need. Who the pack needs, even if they're too blind to see it yet. But Lady Vivian, the Alliance, can go to hell. Dominic's expression hardened, his jaw tightening with a resolve that brooked no argument. I've spent 5 years building political marriages and trade agreements and alliances. I've done everything I was supposed to do as Alpha King, everything that was expected of me. But the one thing I've never done is choose something for myself. The moon goddess is giving me that chance now. I'm not gonna throw it away. Maya's heart did something complicated in her chest. A flutter of hope intertwined with a deep-seated fear. Emotions tangled together until she couldn't tell which was which. The feast dragged on for hours, each minute an eternity under the scrutiny of the pack. By the time the last pack member finally left, offering a perfunctory bow, Maya was exhausted, drained by the emotional turmoil and the relentless pressure. Dominic stood and offered her his hand again, his touch a silent promise of protection and support. Come, I'll show you to your new quarters. New quarters? Maya blinked, her mind still struggling to process the whirlwind of events. But the servant's wing. You're not a servant anymore, Maya. You're the future Luna. You'll stay in the Luna's suite. He must have seen the panic flicker across her face because he added quickly, his voice softening. It connects to my rooms, but there's a door between them. You'll have privacy. I'm not going to force anything on you, Maya. We'll take this at whatever pace you need. She should have felt relieved, reassured by his consideration. Instead, she felt a strange pang of disappointment, a subtle ache of longing that she didn't want to examine too closely, afraid of what she might find. He led her through corridors she'd only ever seen while cleaning them, her hands scrubbing at the dirt and grime, up staircases she'd scrubbed 1,000 times, her knees aching with exhaustion. Now, she walked beside the Alpha King, her head held high, her future uncertain but full of unexpected possibilities. The Luna's suite was on the top floor of the pack house, a world away from the cramped servants' quarters. The windows overlooked the vast expanse of the surrounding forest, offering a breathtaking view of the moonlit landscape. Dominic opened the door, and Maya stepped into a room that was bigger than the entire servants' quarters, a space of unimaginable luxury and comfort. The walls were painted a soft cream color, the gentle hue creating a sense of warmth and tranquility. The bed was enormous, a sprawling expanse covered in a mountain of pillows and a thick duvet that looked impossibly soft, inviting her to sink into its depths and forget the turmoil of the day. There was a fireplace, crackling merrily with a welcoming fire, a sitting area with plush chairs and a small table, perfect for intimate conversations, a vanity with a large mirror framed in ornate silver, and a door that she assumed led to a private bathroom, a luxury she had only dreamed of. Everything was beautiful and elegant and completely overwhelming, a sensory overload that left her speechless. "This is too much," Maya whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes wide with disbelief. "I don't belong here." "You do." Dominic moved to the fireplace and lit it with a single match, the flames catching quickly, casting dancing shadows across the room. "This room has been waiting for you, Maya. The pack has been waiting for you. I've been waiting for you, even if I didn't know it." He crossed to her, closing the distance between them, and she had to tilt her head back to look at him, his presence filling her vision. This close, she could see the flecks of darker gray in his silver eyes, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon, hinting at the turmoil that raged within him. Could see the faint scar on his left cheekbone, a subtle reminder of the battles he had fought, both seen and unseen. Could feel the heat radiating off his body, a primal energy that both intimidated and attracted her. "I know this is a lot," he said softly, his voice gentle, his silver eyes searching hers. "I know you're scared, but I meant what I said earlier. You're mine now and I protect what's mine. No one will hurt you, not while I'm breathing." Lady Seraphina said, "My sister is ambitious and cruel, and she's angry because she thought she could control who I chose as Luna." Dominic's jaw tightened, his expression hardening with a flicker of anger. "She can't. And if she tries anything, anything at all, she'll regret it. I promise you that. Maya wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to trust in his power and his protection. But a lifetime of being nothing, of being less than nothing, of being taught to expect the worst, was hard to overcome in one night. Get some rest, Dominic said, moving towards the door that connected to his own rooms, his silver eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer. If you need anything, I'm right through here. And Maya, he paused, his hand resting on the door handle, and she looked up at him, her heart pounding in her chest. Thank you. For what? For sitting in that chair. His smile was crooked, almost shy, a glimpse of vulnerability that touched her deeply. For being brave enough to be yourself, for being here. Then he was gone, the door closing softly behind him, and Maya was alone in a room fit for a queen, a space of unimaginable luxury that felt both comforting and terrifying. She didn't sleep that night. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Serafina's face twisted with rage, heard the whispers of the pack members who thought she didn't belong, felt the weight of expectations she had no idea how to meet. When dawn finally broke, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Maya dragged herself out of bed, her body stiff and aching from the tension. She found clothes in the wardrobe, beautiful dresses and tunics that actually fit her, not the shapeless servant's garb she was used to, clothes that were soft and luxurious against her skin. She chose a simple blue dress and braided her hair, trying to look presentable, trying to project an air of confidence she didn't feel. A knock on the door made her jump, her nerves still on edge. Come in, she called, her voice shakier than she wanted. It wasn't Dominic. It was an older woman with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, her face etched with the wisdom of years. She carried a tray laden with breakfast fresh bread, still warm from the oven, honey, glistening and golden, a selection of cheeses, a colorful array of fruit, and a steaming pot of fragrant tea. Good morning, my lady, the woman said with a small curtsy, her voice warm and welcoming. I'm Nain. I've been appointed as your lady's maid. I don't need a maid. The words came out automatically, a reflex honed by years of serving others, of being the one to offer help, not receive it. Nain smiled, a gentle expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Nevertheless, you have one. The Alpha King's orders. She paused, her expression softening. He also asked me to tell you that he'll be in meetings all morning, but he'd like you to join him for lunch in his study. Maya's stomach churned, the thought of facing Dominic, of navigating the complexities of their newfound relationship, filling her with anxiety. Is he angry? Angry? No, child. Quite the opposite. Nain set the tray on the small table by the window, her movements graceful and efficient. I've known Dominic since he was a boy, since he was just a rambunctious pup. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at you last night. Her eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief. But everyone else, the pack, will come around eventually. Nadine's expression sobered, her smile fading. I won't lie to you, my lady. There will be those who resent you, those who test you, those who will try to undermine your position. But you have the Alpha King's favor, and that's worth more than all the noble bloodlines in the world. Hold on to that, Maya. Hold on to that with all your strength. After Nadine left, Maya forced herself to eat, nibbling at the food with hesitant bites. The food was delicious, a symphony of flavors and textures, but it sat heavy in her stomach, a physical manifestation of her anxiety. She spent the morning exploring the Luna's suite, touching everything with hesitant fingers, still half convinced she'd wake up in the servants' quarters and discover this was all a dream, a cruel and fleeting illusion. At noon, another knock came. This time it was a young guard, barely more than a boy, who introduced himself as Caden. The Alpha King requests your presence, my lady. Maya followed Caden through the pack house, acutely aware of the stares that followed her, the weight of their judgment pressing down on her. Some were curious, their eyes filled with a cautious curiosity. Others were hostile, their gazes narrowed with resentment. A few were calculating, their expressions shrewd and assessing, as if the pack members were trying to figure out how to use her sudden elevation to their advantage, to exploit her position for their own gain. Dominic's study was a large, imposing room lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, filled with ancient tomes and leather-bound volumes. A massive desk dominated the space, covered in papers and maps, a testament to the Alpha King's responsibilities and the weight of his decisions. Dominic stood by the window, his back to the door, gazing out at the surrounding forest. He turned when she entered, his silver eyes lighting up with a warmth that chased away the shadows that lingered in the corners of the room. Maya. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer, a whispered promise. How did you sleep? I didn't really. His expression darkened with concern, the lines around his eyes deepening. We'll work on that. He gestured to the food spread across a side table, a lavish spread that was far more than two people could possibly eat. Are you hungry? It seems like you're expecting an army. He actually looked embarrassed, his cheeks flushing with a hint of color. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I had them bring a little of everything. Something about that, the powerful Alpha King worried about what she'd want for lunch, about catering to her needs, made her smile for the first time since the previous night. A genuine smile that reached her eyes and chased away some of the fear. They ate together, their conversation stilted at first, but gradually easing as Dominic told her about his morning. He'd met with his advisors, his warriors, his accountants, juggling the myriad responsibilities that came with being the Alpha King. He'd dealt with disputes between pack members, mediated conflicts, and reviewed patrol reports, ensuring the safety and security of his people. It was overwhelming just listening to everything he was responsible for, the sheer weight of his duties. And then there's Lady Vivian, he said, his voice carefully neutral, his silver eyes unwavering. She'll be arriving this evening with her father and an entourage. I've already sent word that the engagement is off, but protocol demands I meet with them in person. Maya's appetite vanished, the food turning to lead in her stomach. She's going to hate me. She's going to hate that her political maneuvering didn't work. That I'm different. Dominic reached across the table and took her hand, his touch warm and reassuring, his silver eyes filled with sincerity. I need you to understand something, Maya. This was never a love match. Vivian and I met twice, both times with our parents present, the meeting stiff and formal. She was perfectly pleasant, intelligent and well-spoken, but there was no connection, no spark, no shared understanding. The engagement was purely about merging our territories, strengthening our alliances, securing our future. And now you're risking that merger for me? I'm honoring what the moon goddess has decreed. There's a difference. His thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand, his touch sending shivers of warmth through her veins. Besides, the Silverstream pack needs this alliance as much as we do. They won't break it over personal pride, over a bruised ego. Maya wished she shared his confidence, wished she could believe that the situation was as straightforward as he made it sound. That evening, she dressed in the finest gown she'd ever worn, a deep emerald green that brought out the golden flecks in her brown eyes, a color that made her skin glow and her hair shine. Nain helped her with her hair, sweeping it up into an elegant twist, a style that highlighted her cheekbones and accentuated her features. When Maya looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself, transformed from a downtrodden servant into a vision of grace and elegance. You look like a Luna, Nain said softly, her eyes filled with pride. Try to believe it, Maya. Try to believe in yourself. Dominic was waiting outside her door, leaning against the wall with an air of casual confidence. His eyes widened when he saw her, his gaze sweeping over her with undisguised admiration. You're beautiful, he said, his voice husky with emotion. Heat flooded her cheeks, a blush rising from her neck to her hairline. It's just the dress. No. He stepped closer, his hand cupping her cheek, his touch sending shivers of delight through. The world seemed to shrink, focusing entirely on that single electric point of contact. Her first kiss. It was a notion she'd relegated to the realm of fantasy, never genuinely believing anyone would desire to kiss her, Maya Thornhart. Yet here she was, in the arms of an Alpha King, being treated as if she were the most precious thing in the world. When Dominic finally pulled away, their breaths mingled in the space between them, ragged and uneven. "Sorry," Dominic murmured, though the sincerity of his apology was debatable, a playful glint in his eyes. "I've wanted to do that since the moment I saw you in that chair, looking like a queen waiting to be crowned." "I didn't mind," she managed, her voice barely audible, a mere breath of sound. His answering smile was devastating, a weapon capable of dismantling her carefully constructed defenses. "Good. Now come on. Let's get this over with." He laced his fingers through hers, his touch sending a jolt of warmth through her veins. The meeting with the Silverstream delegation was held in the formal receiving room, a cavernous space adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors and opulent chandeliers that cast a glacial light. Lady Vivian Silverstream was everything Maya had anticipated and more. Tall, statuesque, with a cascade of platinum blonde hair that framed a face of icy perfection. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, were capable of slicing through steel. Beside her stood her father, Lord Theron, a mountain of a man with a booming voice that resonated through the room and a handshake that threatened to crush bones. Dominic clapped the Alpha King on the shoulder, a gesture that spoke of a long-standing, easy camaraderie. "Good to see you, son. We've been looking forward to this visit." "Vivian is excited to see her future home. Aren't you, dear?" Vivian's smile was tight, a mere stretching of lips that didn't reach her glacial eyes. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Dominic, never one for protracted pleasantries, plunged directly into the heart of the matter. "Lord Theron, Lady Vivian, there's been a development. I've asked you here to inform you personally, out of respect for the time we've spent negotiating this alliance." Theron's jovial expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease. "What kind of development?" Dominic moved with a deliberate grace to stand beside Maya, his hand settling possessively on the small of her back, a silent declaration of ownership. "The moon goddess has revealed my fated mate." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. "This is Maya Thornheart, my Luna." The silence that followed was deafening, a vacuum of suspended animation. Then Vivian laughed, a sharp, brittle sound like breaking glass. "You're joking. Please tell me you're joking." "I'm not." Vivian's gaze raked over Maya with undisguised contempt, assessing her as if she were a particularly unpleasant specimen under a microscope. "Her? She's a half-breed. I can smell the human on her from here. This is the mate the moon goddess chose for you? The Alpha King of 7 packs?" "Yes." Dominic's voice hardened, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "And I'd appreciate it if you spoke about my Luna with respect." "Respect?" Vivian's face flushed with a crimson rage. "We've been planning this alliance for 2 years. My father has already signed treaties based on our engagement, and you're throwing it all away for some mongrel servant." "Vivian." Theron's voice cracked like a whip, a desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. "Control yourself." But Vivian was beyond control, fueled by years of carefully cultivated entitlement and the sting of public rejection. She stalked toward Maya, her eyes blazing with fury, and Dominic immediately stepped between them, his body a solid wall of protective muscle. "Don't," he warned, his voice dangerously low. "Or what? You'll kill me for insulting your precious half-breed?" Vivian's eyes blazed, reflecting a volatile mix of fury and wounded pride. "Everyone is going to laugh at you, Dominic. The mighty Alpha King brought low by a girl who can barely shift. It's pathetic." "That's enough." Dominic's power rolled through the room, a tangible force that pressed against the lungs and stole the breath. Even Maya felt it, the primal, overwhelming dominance that made her wolf whimper and instinctively lower itself in submission. "You will leave my territory now, and you will spread the word that Maya Thornheart is under my protection. Anyone who harms her or speaks against her will have me to answer to. That goes for every pack, every territory, every wolf in this alliance. Is that clear?" Theron grabbed his daughter's arm, dragging her back with surprising force. "Crystal clear, my lord. We'll take our leave. But the treaties will be renegotiated to reflect the new circumstances." "I'm not interested in breaking the alliance, Theron." Dominic said, his voice unwavering. But I won't be blackmailed into a loveless political marriage when the moon goddess has given me a better path. Theron's face was a mask of suppressed fury, his neck straining against his collar. But he nodded stiffly. As you say, my lord. Come, Vivian. Vivian allowed herself to be pulled toward the door, but she paused at the threshold, her icy gaze fixed on Maya. You won't last. You're weak. The pack will eat you alive. And when they do, Dominic will realize what a mistake he made. I'll be waiting. Then she was gone, leaving a chilling silence in her wake. Maya's legs nearly gave out, her strength deserting her. Dominic caught her, holding her steady. That went better than I expected, he murmured, though his eyes betrayed a hint of the storm that still raged beneath the surface. Better. Maya's voice cracked, barely a whisper. She threatened me. Yes, but her father didn't, which means the alliance will hold. And that's paramount. Dominic tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes, his gaze intense and unwavering. And Vivian is wrong. You're not weak. You're standing here after facing down one of the most powerful she-wolves in the Northern Territories. That takes courage, Maya. Maya desperately wanted to believe him, to latch onto the strength in his words and let it fill the void of her self-doubt. But Vivian's poisonous words echoed in her mind, a relentless litany of fear and insecurity. Asterisk, you won't last. The pack will eat you alive. Over the next few weeks, Maya learned just how right Vivian had been. The pack didn't accept her, not even close. The higher-ranking wolves ignored her, treating her as if she were invisible. The warriors watched her with barely concealed disdain, their eyes filled with a mixture of resentment and suspicion. But the females were the worst, their animosity palpable, a constant undercurrent of hostility. They whispered when she passed, their voices just loud enough for her to hear, their words like tiny, venomous darts. Asterisk half-breed. Gold digger. She probably used some kind of magic on Dominic to get him to claim her. She's nothing but a human parasite. Serafina, Dominic's sister, was the architect of most of it. Maya was sure. She possessed a talent for subtle cruelty, for poisoning minds with carefully chosen words and veiled insinuations, all while keeping her own hands impeccably clean. Maya tried desperately to learn her new role, to prove herself worthy of Dominic and the pack. She attended pack meetings, even though no one listened when she spoke, her opinions dismissed as irrelevant. She worked tirelessly with Nain, the pack's historian, to understand pack hierarchy and traditions, poring over ancient texts and trying to absorb centuries of lore in a matter of weeks. She even trained with the pack scholars to improve her reading and writing, skills she'd never had the time to develop as a servant, skills that now felt essential to her role as Luna. But it wasn't enough. It was never enough. The more she tried, the more she felt like an imposter, a fraud masquerading as a leader. One afternoon, she was walking through the gardens, seeking a moment of solitude amidst the relentless pressure, when she overheard voices from behind a meticulously manicured hedge. She recognized them immediately. Serafina and several high-ranking females from the pack, their voices laced with malice. It's embarrassing, Serafina said, her voice dripping with disdain. She can't even shift properly. Last week during the full moon, she managed a partial shift that lasted maybe 10 minutes before she collapsed. A whimpering, pathetic mess. Why doesn't Dominic see it? Another voice asked, laced with a hint of frustration. She's making us look weak. The other packs are laughing at us. He's blinded by the mate bond, or he thinks he is. Serafina's voice dropped lower, conspiratorial, and Maya had to strain to hear. But bonds can be broken, especially bonds that shouldn't exist in the first place. There are ways. Maya's blood ran cold, freezing in her veins. She backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. When she was far enough away, she ran back to the pack house, her breath catching in her throat, the words echoing in her mind like a death knell. She knew she should tell Dominic that he deserved to know the extent of the animosity she faced, the depth of the plot against her. But every time she tried to voice the words, they caught in her throat, choked by fear and a profound sense of guilt. He was already doing so much for her, already fighting his entire pack to keep her safe. She couldn't burden him with more, couldn't add to the weight he carried on his broad shoulders. So, she kept quiet, swallowing her fear and her pain, and tried to be stronger, tried to be worthy of his love and his protection. She threw herself into her studies, her training, her duties, hoping that somehow she could earn the pack's acceptance, hoping that she could silence the voices of doubt that plagued her waking hours. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart, crumbling around her like a house of cards. The full moon gathering was a sacred tradition, a night of primal connection and untamed power. All pack members gathered in the forest, drawn together by the irresistible pull of the moon, to shift together, to hunt together, to celebrate their wolf nature, their shared identity. Maya had always watched from a distance before, a silent observer on the fringes of the pack, knowing she wasn't truly one of them. But now she was supposed to be Luna, which meant she had to participate, to stand beside Dominic as his equal, as a leader, as a wolf. Dominic stood beside her in the clearing, his presence a comforting anchor in the sea of uncertainty that threatened to engulf her. Surrounding them were hundreds of pack members, their eyes glowing with anticipation, their bodies vibrating with barely contained energy. The moon hung huge and silver overhead, a celestial beacon calling to every wolf present, stirring the ancient instincts that lay dormant within their souls. All around them, people began to shift, the air filled with the sounds of cracking bones, sprouting fur, and bodies reshaping themselves into powerful, magnificent wolves. It was beautiful and terrible, a raw display of primal power, and completely natural for them, a seamless transition from human to beast. Maya closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and reached for her wolf, that elusive, distant part of herself that seemed forever out of reach. She'd been practicing with Dominic, trying to strengthen the connection, to forge a bond that felt as natural and effortless as it did for everyone else. Sometimes it worked, fleeting moments of unity when she could hold a full shift for an hour or two, feeling the exhilaration of running through the forest, the wind whipping through her fur, the world seen through the keen eyes of a predator. But not tonight. Tonight, her wolf was there. She could feel it, a faint flicker of awareness deep within her soul, but it was distant, weak, as if trapped behind a wall of ice. When she tried to shift, to surrender to the transformation, pain lanced through her body, a searing agony that ripped through her muscles and bones. Her bones started to break and reshape, but they didn't complete the transformation, leaving her stranded halfway, her body a twisted, grotesque mess of human and wolf that made her scream, a sound ripped from the depths of her soul. Maya! Dominic was there immediately, his hands on her shoulders, his face a mask of concern and fear. Let it go. Don't force it. She let go, surrendering to the pain, and her body snapped back to human form, leaving her trembling and weak. She collapsed into Dominic's arms, sobbing with a mixture of pain and humiliation, the weight of her failure crushing her. Around them, the pack had completed their shifts, their wolves standing tall and proud in the moonlight, their eyes glowing with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. Hundreds of wolves watched her, their silence more condemning than any words. "She's pathetic," someone said, their voice dripping with contempt. Maya couldn't tell who, the words echoing through the mate bond, amplified by the shared consciousness of the pack. She'll never be a real Luna. Dominic should reject her. This is shameful. The moon goddess must have made a mistake. Enough! Dominic's voice boomed through the clearing, amplified by his alpha power, a wave of authority that silenced the murmurs of dissent. Anyone who speaks against my mate answers to me personally. Now shift back. All of you. Slowly, reluctantly, the wolves began to shift back to human form, their expressions sullen and resentful. But the damage was done, the unspoken judgment hanging heavy in the air. Maya could see it in their faces, in the way they looked at her, the pity and the disdain that burned like acid. She was less than nothing to them, a source of embarrassment, a constant reminder of their alpha's weakness. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Dominic, her voice choked with tears. "I'm so sorry." "Don't," he said, his arms tightening around her, his grip fierce and protective. This isn't your fault. But it was. She'd failed again, exposed her weakness in front of the entire pack, confirming their worst fears. And this time, even Dominic's protection might not be enough to shield her from their scorn. That night, Maya made a decision, a painful, heartbreaking choice that tore at her soul. She couldn't keep doing this, couldn't keep dragging Dominic down, forcing him to choose between her and his pack, between his heart and his duty. He deserved better, a Luna who could stand beside him as an equal, who could command the respect of the pack, who could bear strong pups to secure the Blackthorn line. The pack deserved better, a leader who embodied their strength and their values, who could guide them through the challenges ahead. She waited until Dominic was asleep, his breathing deep and even, his body relaxed beside her in the Luna's suite. Then, with trembling hands, she slipped out of bed, her heart shattering with every step. She dressed quickly, her movements mechanical, her mind numb with despair. She left a note on the table, a simple goodbye, an apology for her inadequacies, a release of the mate bond that neither of them had fully completed yet. If she left now, before they fully bonded, before their souls were irrevocably intertwined, Dominic could find someone worthy, someone like Vivian, who could actually lead beside him, who could secure the future of the pack. The pack house was eerily quiet as she made her way to the servants' entrance, her footsteps echoing in the vast, empty corridors. No one stopped her, no one questioned her presence. Why would they? They'd all be glad to see her go, relieved to be rid of the half-breed who had disrupted their lives. She was halfway across the grounds, her breath catching in the crisp night air, when she heard the growl, a low, guttural sound that sent a shiver of premonition down her spine. Maya froze in the shadows beneath the trees, her heart leaping into her throat. Eyes glowed in the darkness, not silver like Dominic's, but a feral, hungry gold. Rogues. Rogue wolves were outcasts, banished from their packs for heinous crimes or acts of disloyalty. They traveled in packs, preying on the weak and vulnerable, scavenging for survival, and they'd somehow gotten past the Blackthorn pack's meticulously maintained borders, breaching the wards that protected their territory. There were 5 of them, she realized as they emerged from the shadows, their forms hulking and menacing in the moonlight. All male, all massive in their wolf forms, their eyes fixed on her, their intentions clear. She ran, her feet pounding against the frozen ground, her lungs burning with exertion. It was stupid, she knew, a futile attempt to escape the inevitable. Wolves were faster than humans, infinitely stronger, and she couldn't shift well enough to defend herself. But instinct took over, a primal urge to survive, and she bolted toward the pack house, hoping against hope that someone would hear her, that someone would come to her rescue. She didn't make it 10 feet before they were on her, their shadows engulfing her, their presence a terrifying weight. Jaws snapped at her heels, narrowly missing her flesh. Claws raked across her back, shredding her dress and the skin beneath, sending a searing pain through her body. She screamed, the sound raw and desperate, a plea for help that echoed through the night. Then, the rogues were torn away from her, the air filled with the sounds of snarling and fighting, the clash of teeth against fur, the guttural cries of pain. Maya collapsed to the ground, her back burning with agony, her body trembling with shock and fear. Through tear-blurred vision, she saw a massive black wolf, bigger than any she'd ever seen. Its fur the color of midnight, its eyes silver and luminous, glowing like twin stars. Dominic. He tore into the rogues with a savagery that was terrifying to watch, his movements a blur of muscle and fury. He was a force of nature, all fangs and claws, driven by a primal rage that knew no bounds. The rogues didn't stand a chance against his wrath. Within minutes, 3 were dead, their bodies lying broken and lifeless on the ground. The other 2, sensing their impending doom, turned and fled into the forest, disappearing into the shadows. Dominic let them go, his attention immediately shifting to Maya. He shifted back to human form and ran to her, his movements frantic, his face etched with terror. He gathered her into his arms, his touch gentle despite the tremor that ran through his body. "What were you doing out here?" His voice shook, a raw rasp of emotion. What were you thinking? I was leaving. The words came out slurred, her consciousness fading, the edges of her vision darkening. She was losing too much blood. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserve better. No. Dominic pressed his hand to her back, trying to staunch the bleeding. His fingers slick with her blood. No, you don't get to leave me. You don't get to give up. Maya, please stay with me. The pack. Screw the pack. He was crying. She realized, his tears hot against her skin. The Alpha King, the powerful, unyielding leader of 7 packs, was crying for her. I don't care what they think. I don't care about politics or alliances or bloodlines. Care about you. Only you. He pulled her closer, his voice choked with emotion. You're my mate, Maya, my Luna. The moon goddess chose you and I choose you. Every day I choose you. But I'm weak. You're not. He pulled her closer, his forehead pressed against hers, his eyes burning into her soul. You're the strongest person I know. You survived 23 years in a pack that treated you like garbage. You walked away tonight to protect me, even though it was killing you. That's not weakness, Maya. That's love. His eyes widened as he said it, as if the words had surprised him, as if the realization had just dawned on him. I love you, he said again, more certain this time, his voice ringing with conviction. I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But I love you, and I can't lose you. Please, please don't leave me. Maya's vision was fading, the world blurring around her. But she managed to lift her hand to his cheek, her fingers tracing the sharp angles of his jaw. I love you, too, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I think I have since you made Serafina sit in the chair. He laughed through his tears, a broken, ragged sound that tore at her heart. He kissed her, his lips tasting like salt and desperation, his touch a frantic plea. Maya wished she could hold onto this moment forever, to freeze time and stay wrapped in his arms, safe from the world and its harsh realities. Stay with me, he whispered against her mouth. Fight for me, for us. I'll try, she managed, her voice a mere breath. Then, the world went dark, and Maya slipped into unconsciousness, surrendering to the embrace of oblivion. Maya awoke in the pack hospital 3 days later, her body weak and aching, her back bandaged and throbbing with pain. Every movement sent a jolt of agony through her. But she was alive, she was breathing, and Dominic was there. He was asleep in a chair beside her bed, his hand wrapped around hers, his grip tight and possessive. He looked terrible, his usually impeccable hair a mess, dark circles etched under his eyes, stubble covering his jaw. He hadn't slept in days, she realized. He'd been watching over her, his vigil unwavering. Dominic. Her voice was raspy, barely a whisper. His eyes snapped open, silver and wild, his gaze immediately focusing on her. Maya. He sat up straight, his body tensing with relief. Oh, thank God. He stood and leaned over her, cupping her face in his hands, his touch gentle and reverent. How do you feel? Like I got attacked by rogues, she managed, a weak attempt at humor. Not funny, he said, but a ghost of a smile touched his lips. A little funny, she insisted. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her nose, his touch lingering, reassuring. Don't ever scare me like that again. I won't, she promised, her voice filled with conviction. I won't. She caught his hand, threading their fingers together, her gaze unwavering. Dominic, I meant what I said. I love you, and I'm not giving up. Not on us. Not on the pack. Whatever it takes. I'll prove I'm worthy. You don't have to prove anything, he said, his voice soft and tender. But she could see the relief in his eyes, the weight that lifted from his shoulders. Although, there is something you should know, he continued, his expression turning grim. What? The rogues that attacked you? They didn't get past our borders by accident. They were let in. Someone disabled the wards on the eastern perimeter and gave them information about your location. Maya's blood ran cold, the shock of the revelation stealing her breath. Who? I'm still investigating, he said, his expression turning deadly, his eyes flashing with a chilling rage. But when I find out who's responsible, they'll wish the rogues had gotten them instead. Over the next week, Dominic questioned everyone who'd been near the eastern border that night, his investigation relentless and thorough. He called in trackers from other packs, interrogated guards, reviewed every entry and exit from the packlands, poring over maps and security logs, piecing together the fragmented clues. Slowly, painstakingly, a picture emerged, a web of deceit and betrayal that led back to the heart of the pack. Serafina. It wasn't proof, not yet, but too many threads led back to her, too many coincidences that couldn't be ignored. The guard who'd been on duty that night was one of her closest friends, a man known for his unwavering loyalty to her. The witch who'd maintained the wards had borrowed a large sum of money from her last month, a debt that had never been repaid. The servant who had mentioned seeing Maya leave the pack house had been in Serafina's employ for years, a loyal and trusted confidant. Dominic called a pack meeting, summoning every wolf in the territory to gather in the Great Hall, their faces a sea of anticipation and apprehension. More than 500 people filled the vast space, their energy palpable, their silence heavy with anticipation. Serafina stood near the front, her face a mask of concern, her eyes wide with feigned innocence. "Thank the goddess you're all right," she said to Maya, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear, her words dripping with insincerity. "When I heard about the attack, I was beside myself with worry." "Were you?" Dominic's voice was cold, a chilling counterpoint to her saccharine performance. "That's interesting, because according to my investigation, you're the one who arranged it." Gasps rippled through the crowd, a wave of shock and disbelief washing over the faces of the pack members. Serafina's eyes went wide, but not with shock, with calculation, her mind racing as she weighed her options, her carefully constructed facade beginning to crumble. "That's absurd," she said, her voice rising in pitch. "Why would I? Because you wanted Maya dead?" Dominic said, his voice low and menacing. "You thought if she was gone, I'd accept Vivian as Luna, and you'd maintain your influence over pack politics, your control over the pack." Dominic descended from the dais, stalking toward his sister like a predator, his eyes burning with a fury that threatened to consume her. "You disabled the wards. You gave the rogues information about her location. You tried to have my mate murdered." "You have no proof," Serafina said, her voice trembling, her carefully controlled composure finally cracking. "This is insane, Dominic. I'm your sister. And she's my mate," Dominic countered, his voice unwavering, his gaze fixed on Maya. "My Luna. The moon goddess herself chose her." Dominic's power filled the room, a tangible force that pressed against the chest and stole the breath. "You tried to kill what's mine. Do you know what the punishment for that is?" Serafina's face went pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Dominic, please." "Death." The word hung in the air like an executioner's blade, silencing the crowd, leaving them breathless with dread. But Dominic continued, his voice softening slightly, a flicker of the brother she once knew flickering in his eyes. "Because you are my sister, because our parents loved you, I'm giving you one chance to confess. Tell everyone here what you did, and I'll exile you instead of executing you. Take responsibility for your actions, and I will spare your life." Serafina looked around the hall, searching for allies, for someone who would stand with her, who would challenge Dominic's authority. But everyone avoided her gaze, even her closest friends, because challenging an alpha king over his mate was suicide, a fool's errand that would only end in their own destruction. And they all knew it. "I did it," she whispered, her voice barely audible, a broken admission of guilt. "I arranged the attack. I wanted her gone. She's wrong for you, Dominic. She's weak, and she's making us weak." "That's enough." Dominic's voice cracked like a whip, silencing her protests. "Guards, escort her to the border. She has 1 hour to leave the Blackthorn Packlands. If she ever returns, she'll be killed on sight." As Serafina was dragged away, screaming curses and threats, her face contorted with rage and desperation, Dominic turned to address the pack, his voice ringing with authority. Let this be a lesson to all of you, he said, his gaze sweeping over the crowd, his message clear and unequivocal. Maya Thornheart is my mate. She's your Luna, and anyone who harms her, threatens her, or plots against her will face the same fate. I don't care if you're family. I don't care if you're friends. My mate is sacred to me, and I will burn this entire pack to the ground before I let anyone hurt her. Is that clear? The pack members dropped to one knee in submission, their heads bowed, their voices a chorus of agreement. Yes, Alpha King. They chorused, their obedience absolute. Dominic's eyes found Maya where she stood at the edge of the dais, her face pale but resolute. He crossed to her, his expression softening, his eyes filled with love and admiration. Are you all right? He asked quietly, his voice tender. I will be, she said, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. She took his hand, threading their fingers together, her touch a silent declaration of her commitment. Thank you for believing in me, for protecting me always. He kissed her knuckles, his touch reverent and possessive. From now until the end of time, you're mine, and I'm yours. 3 months later, on the night of the harvest moon, Dominic and Maya completed their mating bond in front of the entire pack, their union witnessed by the ancient trees and the watchful eyes of the moon goddess. When Dominic bit down on her neck, marking her as his, claiming her as his own, Maya felt something inside her shift and settle, as if a missing piece of her soul had finally fallen into place. Her wolf, which had always been weak and distant, a mere shadow of its true potential, suddenly surged to life, flooding her with a power she'd never felt before, a primal energy that coursed through her veins. When she shifted for the first time, a full, complete shift, she was a silver wolf with golden eyes, smaller than Dominic's black wolf, but fast and graceful, her movements fluid and effortless. The pack howled their approval, their voices ringing through the forest, their acceptance finally complete. Maya realized that they'd finally accepted her, not because of her bloodline or her power, but because she'd survived, because she'd endured their trials and tribulations, because she'd proven herself worthy through courage and love. As she ran through the forest beside her mate, the moon goddess's blessing warm in her heart, Maya thought back to that day in the grand hall, to the moment she'd sat in the Luna's chair, and it had molded to her body, claiming her as its own. The chair had known the truth before anyone else, before Maya herself. She belonged here with Dominic, with this pack, with this life. She always had. She just needed to be brave enough to believe it. And now, running beneath the silver moon with her mate beside her and her pack behind her, Maya Thornheart, Luna of the Blackthorn pack, finally understood what the moon goddess had known all along. She was exactly where she was meant to be.